Welcome to the summer course of a special topic of serial murders, or like the syllabus says, serial killers. We're going to be using this textbook, Serial Murders, 7th edition, by Eric W. Hickey. We're going to look at chapter 1, which is going to be dealing with the introduction of our topic. All these PowerPoints and some of the notes that I will provide for you inside the learning modules on Blackboard. Each week you'll click on the lesson, and inside that lesson there'll be a learning module. I will show you in another video of how to navigate in case some of y'all don't know how to navigate around Blackboard. But for now, let's take a look at the learning objectives. We want to understand the many myths surrounding serial murder and how society deals with those myths. We want to look at the different definitions of homicide, okay, in our criminal justice system and how society deals with that. We're going to explore the extent of mass and serial murders within the United States. We're going to look at the different case studies. We will see that we're going to deal with every week. I want to present and have some information for you to research on different serial murderers. This is the journey into forensics on how the path of criminal investigation occurs. And y'all could pick up some of this information, like I said, on the PowerPoint. It'll be provided for you inside the module. When we define murder, just like anything else, we got to make sure we know the definitions of what we're dealing with before we can move on and research. So a murder requires an illegal taking of another's life. It is specifically formed around intent. And that is the huge part when we're deciding whether if it was self-defense or was it a case of sudden passion, things like that. But in this case, with dealing with serial murders, there's going to be intent to want to kill. Also, we're going to determine the different definitions of mass to serial murders. We're going to see that there's a cooling off period and what a reasonable person would do and is expected to do under the circumstances that they lead to the killings. We have first-degree murder, includes felony murder, committed while in the course of committing another felony, killing someone when robbing a bank. Just like if there's burglary and someone gets killed, and other types of felonies when there's a murder that occurs based on the action that you're doing. This may involve poisoning, this is laying in wait, torture, or even with situations of using an explosive. We'll deal with some of this data as we move along. As you read the chapter, you're going to see the different rates in our data that we want to take a look at. You're going to see that the homicide facts, we always want to look at the facts and see what they tell us. And some of this, again, you'll be able to read through this. I don't want to read every slide. That's for your job to read the actual chapter 1 and look at the chapter 1 PowerPoint as well. If we look at capital cases from a judicial point of view, the most serious of murders are capital cases involving premeditated murder or the willful, intentional killing of another person. You have non-capital types of murder, justifiable homicide, if someone is in action of some sort and they find that there's no fault. This usually involves in killing of someone under necessity of or duty. Police officer, a firefighter, someone who's acting in good faith, and someone loses their life. These killings lack criminal intent. This can include various forms of defense of family or self or others. Manslaughter can be either voluntary manslaughter that involves killing another person or persons in the heat of passion and the commission of another felony or self-defense. Involuntary manslaughter, sometimes referred to as negligent homicide, and involves the killing of another person or persons while committing a non-felony offense such as reckless driving, also referred to as vehicular manslaughter. Now, this one's real important for y'all who love to text and or drink and drive. You know, some of this will apply. if you driving recklessly, too fast, or not paying attention to the road. These two right here, the manslaughter and involuntary, would apply in these instances. Let's see. Defining mass murder. Now we're going to look at the FBI. It says killing of 4 or more persons at one time is considered to be mass murder. There's a difference between mass and serial murder. Over half of all attempted or completed mass murders in the United States involve domestic homicides. So when you look at that, you look at the word domestic and you see that that plays a major part of the characteristics that we'll be looking at. Profiles of mass murder, and here's a few here that y'all can look into. You got the one that I remember the most is the Dr. Hassan, psychiatrist at Fort Hood, Texas in 2009, shot over 40 military personnel, killing 13. That was a huge case, and I know that that one to me is the one that I remember the most out of this list. As we continue Chapter 1 PowerPoint, Charles Whitman, 16 dead, 32 wounded, as well as his wife and mother. If you remember back in time, you can look this up on the YouTube or search the Google or whatever you use for search, engine search. He said, "I do not quite understand what it is that compels me to type this letter. Perhaps it is to leave someone a vague reason for the actions I have recently performed. I do not really understand myself these days. I'm supposed to be an average, reasonable, and intelligent young man. However, lately I cannot recall when it started. I have been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts." He's the guy that went on top of the tower down there in UT and started using his rifle to shoot the 16 dead and 32 wounded. He ended up having, I believe, a brain tumor. Y'all can look this up. And we tried to, at the time, and we still do these days, is try to understand why people commit the acts that they do. What sets them off. And as we go through this course, we're going to find out the different drivers or motivation that causes people to do the things that they do. If we look at Holmes in the textbook, the researcher that looked at the classifications of mass murder, he talks about the family slayer, okay, or the person who kills his family and commits suicide, murder for profit, murder for sex, okay, pseudo commando, a person with an obsession for guns and a fantasy for murder, set and run killer, a person who plans an escape route following the mass killings. These are all different classifications within mass murder that we'll see what plays a major role as we move along. So Holmes and other researchers try to help us explain what we're going to be up against as we move along, looking at serial murders. Psychotic killers, a person suffering from acute or chronic psychosis, someone legally insane. A disgruntled employee, they always talk about going postal. A discipline type of killer, a person who commits murder at the behest of a charismatic leaders such as Charles Manson. They follow someone who they are what we determine brainwashed by. Ideological mass murder, a person who is especially a cult leader who is able to persuade others to kill themselves or each other. Now they say Jim Jones and Applewhite, but David Koresh is the one that Dr. Hicks talks about if you get in a conversation with him about the Waco and the Branch Davidians, if I said that right. Institutional mass murderer, a person who commits mass murder as a crime of obedience when ordered to by his or her leader. And they talk about genocide, like Hitler with the Jewish people and others that they determined that were not worthy to be alive. And so that kind of helps as we move along. These are going to help us build categories and characteristics to understand what groups or categories that people fall into when we're talking about mass murder. Facts about mass murder appear to give little concern to his or her capture or death. We see this a lot with death by cop, where they just want to die and they just try to create chaos. Some were killed by police during the attack. Others killed themselves once they have completed the massacre. We had that in Florida at that nightclub, I believe, where I think it's right, where he took his own life. Some offenders surrender to police or offer no resistance. And sometimes they want to, depending on the mass murderer, they want to be idolized, or they don't have the guts to kill themselves after the acts that they perform. If we're looking at mass murders, they usually occur at or around one district location, such as a school, office building, or a private residence. Very rarely do they span out across a huge area. In some mass killings, an offender begins his or her murders in one location and then moves to another building or address to continue the killing. Okay, this is referred to as bifurcation. So it's not, when we talk about over a span of a territory or topography or whatever you want to call it, we're talking about, not several states. It's usually within a certain district or area. We also look at public-to-public events that are deemed mass murders or extremely rare. Private-to-public mass murders, however, are much more likely to occur when mass murder events are bifurcated. And so you can see some of that. You all can look at some of these examples here and go through the times that these events have occurred. I'm going to move a little faster here. I know y'all can go back and reference some of this. Mass murder, okay, serial and spree murder. Mass murderers usually are apprehended or killed by police, commit suicide, or later surrender. It's kind of funny because, what else is there, right? I guess they could get killed by a bystander or something like that. Reactions to mass murders are often media intense. They focused and of short duration, while cases of serial murder may extend over several years. So mass murders happen all at once. Serial killers, it might take 2 or 3 years before we actually come up with who did what, when, where, and how. Serial killers usually make special efforts to elude detection. They may continue to kill for weeks, months, or years before being stopped. Mass murders kill groups of people, usually within a few minutes or hours, wherein the serial killers individualize his or her murders over days, weeks, months, or years. In cases of spree murder, investigators and researchers cannot agree on how to adequately define the cooling off period that allegedly occurs between killings. We see this with certain individuals who commit multiple murders, who we're all different. We all have different experiences and different mental mindsets. And the cooling off period for one person might be 3 months, but for someone else, it might be a week. And so it's real hard to nail down for investigators when a certain person is going to act out again. As of 2008, experts have collectively agreed that the concept of spree murder be eliminated and that such offenders be included with other cases of serial murder, because it's hard to scientifically prove XYZ is going to kill in 3 days, a month, a year. We don't know. We don't know what sets off people. Just like our attitudes and mindsets, or those with PTSD or something like that, you don't know what the triggers are because we're all different. Definition of serial murder: the unlawful killing of 2 or more victims by the same offender in separate events. Mass murderers, they do it all together. But when they're spread out over different events, that's where we come into serial murder. There are lots of myths out there. The one that I hear a lot, that it's usually white people. Okay, they have a certain prototype. All male, insane, or psychopaths. Driven to kill due to sexual abuse. Highly intelligent, lust, they kill alone, cannot stop killing, highly mobile. These are all things that people try to stereotype on serial murders. It sucks about, in recent years, the majority of serial killers are black. Is that because of the population growth? Things like that we need to look at. 17% are female, still a low number, but it is increasing. Insanity is a legal term. Only 2 to 4% are legally insane. And we'll look at that later on down the road. Most serial killers are of average intelligence. Some are motivated by material gain. Some feel like they're less worthy because they don't have things and they get jealous. And it turns into hate. Many kill due to rejection and abandonment in childhood. And so a lot of them have those levels of development that they did not get in their younger years. Most kill under 8 victims. Most kill in local areas. So there's that area again. Some have several years between murders. They have a cooling off period of longer periods of time. But again, these are different for different people that kill. About 1 in 4 have 1 or more killing partners. That's something that's unique. Somebody usually knows or helps out, but scared to go forth, or they love them. We'll see that later on. Some victims are poisoned. Some learn from experience and avoid detection, while others are caught and imprisoned only to be released and kill again. Some killers are true psychopaths, while others possess psychopathic traits. Again, when we look at the psychology of it, a lot of those characteristics cross over, are not solid in one place. Several have a high body count. Serial killers who have been evaluated do not qualify as psychopath. We'll look at that. We'll get into the more of that, of the evaluations of those who survive or live or were able to profile. Serial killers are vary in race, ethnicity, religion, nationality, age, okay, gender and education, and so on, and IQ. We'll see some of that as we move along. All right, so for now, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to look at a couple more things, and then we're going to call it good for Chapter 1. Again, I want you all to read Chapter 1 and look at the total PowerPoint in chapter. Primary motivations in serial murder. Let's take a look at this. Anger, criminal enterprise. They get paid for it. This is their job. There's a financial gain, which kind of, to me, goes in with the other. Ideology, if it's driven by their beliefs. The power, okay, there's a thrill that they get. Just like those who do sexual acts, there's a power that they get because they're able to control over that person. Psychosis, they have some sort of issue where they're not thinking in the right manners. Let's see. All right, we're going to stop there for now for my lecture. Make sure you check out the complete module. Look at the next work that you have to do. We're going to have a quiz and a small discussion for week 1. Other than that, we'll do this again next week, and I will try to answer questions as we move along and through emails. Make sure you use the ASU emails. All right, thank you.